Northeast Tonight, brought to you by Oil India Limited, conquering newer horizons.
Hello and welcome to Notice Tonight, the show that decodes the region. The peace bugle can now be heard loud and clear across the Northeast. And the spotlight clearly is on Mizoram Chief Minister and Mizo National Front leader, Mr. Zoramthanga, who has confirmed to me during a conversation on Thursday that he has indeed been assigned a role by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, like other Prime Ministers in the past, to work for restoration of peace in the region. Mr. Zoramthanga said he would try his best to bring peace, including in Manipur. Mr. Zoramthanga has seen it all, because when the Mizo National Front insurgency began in 1966, he served first as secretary and then was deputy to the outfit's iconic leader, Mr. Laldenga. In the years leading to the Mizo Peace Accord in 1986, Mr. Zoramthanga was engaged in negotiations with the Indian government emissaries in locations across the world, including in Rome. His daredevil escape to present Bangladesh via Yangon through the Arakan forests, marching for 2 days, and his meeting with Chinese leaders like Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong are as fascinating to hear as they are to read. The big question now is, can Mr. Zoramthanga succeed in bringing the remaining insurgent groups and factions in states like Manipur to the negotiating table? Will he tread alone, or will he take some Manipur civil society leaders and groups along in the endeavor? Does he stand a better chance of winning the trust of the rebel leaders? Will Mr. Zoramthanga try to also convince Ulfa independent leader Mr. Paresh Barua? Okay, before we begin the discussions, let's listen in to a conversation that I had earlier with the man himself, Mr. Zoramthanga, the leader of the MNF and the Chief Minister of Mizoram. I understand you have been entrusted with a very important responsibility by none other than the Prime Minister. Can you a little bit elaborate, sir, for our understanding?
Oh, that has been done even by Wasbir. That is to try to make a peace in the Northeast, and it was done also by the Congress Prime Minister, and then even to the Province Prime Minister. They wanted me to make my effort to make peace here in the Northeast. From Wasbir time that has been going on, and I keep trying my level best.
Now what will be your responsibility? Now what can you contribute at this point in time, according to you?
My responsibility is that I'll have to try my level best, and then I do not know how much contribution I shall be able to do. Depends upon the person whom I contact, and time will reveal whether I can be successful or other ways.
You have recently met the Manipur Chief Minister, Mr. N. Biren Singh, and that meeting has taken place barely 3 days after he said that, he will also try to establish contact with the Meitei underground group so that they can be brought to the negotiating table. Did he entrust you with that or request your services for that?
Yeah, we discussed all those things with Biren.
Right. Will you be willing to contribute as far as bringing peace in Manipur?
Yeah. Bringing? What do you say? What?
Bringing peace. Bringing peace in Manipur.
Yeah. That is what I'm intending to do. When I say Northeast, it includes Manipur also.
Right. And does it also include Ulfa independent leader Paresh Barua?
All of them.
So you have said that from Vajpayee's time, and then the Congress Prime Minister have requested you. Has Mr. Narendra Modi also requested you recently?
Yeah, he did request me. During Vajpayee time, he requested me, and I went to Bangkok, and I met the Naga people umpteen times. And then when during the Congress time also, the Prime Minister said that we don't have any other person to utilize for making peace in the Northeast except you. So Manmohan Singh also did the same thing. Of course, I did try with my limited power because I was not in power. Nevertheless, I went to Burma, and then they came to me, and I did help them to some extent.
Right.
But when Modi also come to power, many a time he told me that if I try my level best for making peace here in the Northeast, then that should have been his wish, and therefore I did try my level best
Right.
to make peace.
Finally, this Manipur now is the only state where there has been no real peace talks between the rebels and the government, because there are so many major rebel groups in the Imphal Valley. So
Right.
will Manipur be your biggest responsibility now?
Manipur certainly will be not to say of my responsibility. It is the responsibility of all of us, including the government of India and the Manipur government. But it needs a lot of effort in Manipur, and then not that it's my responsibility. It's a responsibility everybody, and I'll try my level best to bring peace in Manipur as well as in the Northeast and also in Myanmar.
All right, that was Mizoram Chief Minister, Mr. Zoramthanga, talking to Northeast Live, talking to me earlier on the responsibility being entrusted to him to try and bring peace in the northeastern region. Very candidly admits that he has indeed been asked by Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his services to bring peace by bringing the underground rebel groups to the negotiating table. To begin the discussions, I'm joined from Aizawl by Mr. Charlie Lalkaunliana, editor of The Highlander, one of the most respected voices from Mizoram. MNF leader, Mr. Van Lalgaya, is also joining me from Aizawl. From Manipur, I have Chongtham Bijoy of the Bharatiya Janata Party, is the state spokesman of the BJP, and Dr. Arambam Noni, assistant professor at the DM University. And in the studios here in Guwahati, I have Mr. Swapnanil Barua, political analyst, and Mr. Sunil Lat, former Alpha leader and currently writer and commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I'd first like to go to Aizawl, to Mr. Charlie Lalkaunliana. As I said, the editor of the Highlander newspaper, one of the most respected voices from Mizoram. Mr. Charlie Lalkaunliana, you know, Pu Zoramthanga has confirmed that he's embarking on a fresh peace mission in the Northeast. The idea is to get, all the insurgent groups to the negotiating table. Do you think he's the right person indeed for such a job at this point in time in the Northeast? Mr. Charlie.
I'd say that the current Chief Minister of Mizoram and the trusted lieutenant of the late Mr. Laldenga, nobody else with much Mr. Zoramthanga in brokering peace between the opposing factions. He has had that experiences, a lot experiences, and I think I wish he'll be the right person for people to look to him to help brokering peace between two opposing factions.
Okay, viewers, Mr. Charlie Lalkaunliana, in fact, is someone among those who knows Mr. Zoramthanga very well and has kept a good track record of the happenings before and after the Mizo Accord was signed in 1986. He knows things inside out. Mr. Charlie, once again, Mr. Charlie Lalkaunliana, since Mr. Zoramthanga has been a negotiator on behalf of the MNF before the 1986 Accord, do you think he knows the art of negotiating and playing the role of a mediator? Because this was a 20-year-long insurgency, 1966 to 1986, 20 solid years, one of the most blistering insurrections in India's history, actually. In fact, so do you think Mr. Zoramthanga actually knows the art of negotiations? Therefore, he's the right person.
I wouldn't be surprised if people look to him to help brokering peace between the opposing factions. Brokering peace is an art. He has had that experience. But one thing I want to point out is that brokering peace is different from, it's not the success itself of making peace with, between two opposing factions. So I want to make a point here,
Please
if
go
you
ahead.
don't mind. I want to make a point that
Yes.
the secret of success of the signing of agreement between the MNF and the government of India was not because of the powerful, persuasive, power of the mediators. The success is between the goodwill and support members of the public, that is, political leaders, social, the societies.
Right.
They sponsored. That was the success. Depend on it. I think we have the situation prevailing in Nagaland and Manipur. The trouble is not denying that all the factions are not in one of accord. So they have to agree to each other to appoint to broker a peace. Even Zoramthanga can help them, all the section of the people, but success will depend.
All right.
the people.
All right. I'll come back to you, Mr. Salil Alkhauliana. Let me go to Imphal. Mr. Chongtham Bijoy, Chief Minister Biren Singh has been quite candid in the last few days. He said that very clearly. He said that he will definitely try his utmost to bring peace in Manipur, and he has also said that he will take the help of the center to bring the underground groups, including those, large number of those in the Imphal Valley, to the negotiating table. Do you think, and there was this meeting, highly publicized meeting between him and the Mizoram counterpart, Mr. Zoramthanga. Now, Zoramthanga has confirmed to us during the interview that he is going to bring peace in the Northeast, and Manipur is one of his very big responsibilities. Do you think Mr. Zoramthanga is able to, achieve a breakthrough? Do you think he will be able to achieve a breakthrough as far as Manipur is concerned? Mr. Chongtham Bijoy.
I am really happy that Sri Zoramthanga has agreed to broker peace in the Northeast at the request of the Honorable Prime Minister. And our state government minister is very serious in pushing through this peace initiative. The Honorable Governor herself has announced it in her speech in the Assembly. And about Mr. Zoramthanga, I think there will be no better person in the entire Northeast to broker peace in such a difficult situation. Firstly, it is his position. Secondly, his long experience as a second in command of the MNF. Then he himself, went through the Mizo Accord. And one thing I like to mention here, Mr. Wasbir, is that among all the, insurgent groups in the entire Northeast, the MNF had, they have undergone through various circumstances which was not experienced by any other insurgency group in the Northeast. You see, on the 1st March 1966, they declared independence. Then soon after, about 3 days later, on March 4, 1966, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered the Indian Air Force to bomb Aizawl in Mizoram for 1 full week. And this is, in this case, Mizoram hold the distinction of being bombarded by their own Air Force.
Yes.
And secondly, you see, after 20 years of bush war in Mizoram, Mizoram Accord was signed in 1986. Then soon after that, in 2001, they also won the peace bonus. And so far, in the whole country, Mizoram, only Mizoram remains
unique.
The country.
So you are saying, Mr. Chongtham Bijoy, yes, Mr. Chongtham Bijoy, so you are basically...
And moreover, you see,
So, Mr. Bijoy,
Yes.
you know, basically you are saying that you are happy with the decision by Mr. Zoramthanga to agree to be a mediator to try and give his services to broker peace in the northeastern region. Now, my question is, do you think Mr. Zoramthanga, if necessary, should also travel abroad, places like Myanmar and other places, to meet with the Meitei rebel leadership and other rebel leaders from Manipur to have preliminary negotiations with them, preliminary discussions with them?
His present position and his impeccable credential puts him in a very good position to negotiate with the various insurgent groups in Manipur also. And his experience of traveling and meeting them abroad, say maybe somewhere in Thailand, Burma or China, whatever it is, having been in the underground as well as in the government for so long, he knows the mind of these people at various stages of their struggle.
Right.
And moreover, you see, at this juncture, I came across one of his tweets, Mr. Zoramthanga's tweets. He was quoting the Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin regarding peace. And from that quote, I observed that he really understands and he longs for peace. He was praying for the everlasting peace in entire Mizoram.
Absolutely,
That
absolutely.
means after his long
Absolutely.
struggle and
I'll
all
come back
those
to you,
romantic ideas of
Mr. Bijoy. I'll come back to you. Let me go to Dr. Arambam Noni, professor at the DM University. You know, Dr. Arambam Noni, recently, you know, Mr. Zoramthanga, you know, organized a release. He mediated and helped in the release. I would say helped. No, I would draw the word mediate. I would rather stick to the word help. Mr. Zoramthanga helped secure the release of an National League for Democracy MP who was kidnapped by the Arakan army in Myanmar. You know, that explains the rich, the wide contacts which Mr. Zoramthanga has and the respect he commands, not just in the northeast, but in our immediate vicinity, that is in places like Myanmar. So do you think he is the right man at this juncture to establish contact with the various underground groups in Manipur to prepare the ground for a possible formal dialogue with the government of India? Dr. Arambam.
Mr. Wasbir, I think you have raised a very good point. Of course, I think Mr. Zoramthanga is one of the right persons around who can engage with the northeastern rebels. There's no doubt about it. We can trust him, and I think he has the capacity and ability, and he has got experience also. He himself being a former rebel, I think he has the credential to contact with all kinds of rebels. However, I just want to say that peace must, of course, be given a chance in the northeastern region, particularly in the light of Manipur. However, I think when we are talking about peace, I think it looks like we are talking with reference to Nagaland, with reference to Mizoram experience, and also with reference to the latest developments in the Bodo areas. I think one must understand that the context of Manipur cannot be exactly similar to the cases of other states. For example, Manipur being an Asiatic state for a long time and having seen all kinds of constitutional development before India. Now, I think it needs to be understood. In what context
we have to.
and
There
what
are several.
ground?
Yes, Dr. Noni.
Yeah.
You see, Manipur's case is
that has
different.
to be.
Now,
That
let
has
me
to be
tell you.
understood.
Let me tell you,
Yeah.
it was a princely state. There are a lot of layers, but you know,
Right.
but at least somebody has to make a beginning somewhere, and only then
Of
things.
course.
I'll come back
Of
to you.
course.
I'll come back
Of
to you. But
course.
you have raised a very
No,
important point.
I just-
Hang on. I'm having the
wanna-
opening remarks
yeah.
from my panelist, Mr. Sunil Nath. Dr. Arambam Noni has raised a very important point. He said that being a former rebel himself, Mr. Zoramthanga has impeccable credentials, and then therefore he is a person who the rebels may trust. So trust is a key factor for a mediator, isn't it?
That is true. That is very much true. And Mr. Zoramthanga being like, he's one of the living legends.
Right.
As far as insurgency in Northeast is considered. And he's one of the tallest leaders. He leads his own state as a chief minister now. So he is in the base position to broker peace between the rebel leaders and the government of India. That has to be agreed. I agree with the House.
So, Mr. Swapnil Barua,
Yes.
I'll be going to Mr. Vanlal Gia shortly, but Mr. Swapnil Barua, at this point we are talking, yes, Dr. Arambam Noni has said that, we are talking about this in the context of the recent Bodo Accord, and immediately followed by that statement from the Manipur Chief Minister where he said that now that Bodo Accord has succeeded, four rebel factions have come over ground, they have laid down arms, they have pledged to join the mainstream. Now, why can't Manipur? Because Manipur is the only state that is outside the purview of the peace process so far. It is at this juncture that the Manipur Chief Minister has made this statement that I will also try now very hard after the Bodo experience. He has said that he has already been in touch with the Prime Minister. And then we hear Mr. Zoramthanga emerging on the scene as one of the key players. So these are fast-moving developments, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the situation is something like, independent India kind of a thing. This whole thing happened throughout the geographical part of India is that now we shall go for freedom. I think now if I see it, Bodo Accord apart, but there has been a general atmosphere that people are wanting peace. People are fed up with insurgency because insurgency per se has not brought them such benefits as they had been told in the initial stage.
Right.
I think initially the people cooperated with the underground and thought that maybe we shall get independence from India. But this has been a long story for now 3 decades, 4 decades. In fact, one generation is gone.
Absolutely.
And if you look at the credibility of Mr. Zoramthanga to be the negotiator, look at any other, can you find any other person? Because all of them are now so young that they haven't seen insurgency themselves, in the true form, at least in the initial years, or are politically sagacious or aware enough. I think Conrad will be so young, Mr. Sangma would be so young.
Yeah, but I think it belies a comparison, Swapnil Barua, because as the top MNF leader, he was on the side as a guerrilla chieftain. We'll be showing interesting pictures soon on the screen. There we have seen Zoramthanga, along with his leader Laldenga. We'll be showing the viewers those pictures as well. But a point is, I'll come back to you, Mr. Swapnil Barua. Let me quickly go to Aizawl. Mr. Vanlal Gaya, a senior MNF leader. Let me tell the viewers about Mr. Vanlal Gaya. In fact, at the height of the Mizo insurgency, in the height of the Mizo insurgency before the accord, one day Mr. Vanlal Gaya was talking about this today. He said that he had discussions with Mr. Laldenga and Mr. Zoramthanga, and he described both as extremely pragmatic leaders. He said that independence is very easy to demand, but you have to find a way out. Therefore, Mr. Vanlal Gaya, who I am going to shortly, is the person entrusted to break the news to the government of India that they were ready for discussions. So we have a very, very important personality in the discussions today. Mr. Vanlal Gaya, I really appreciate your time in joining the program. Now that Pu Zoramthanga has been entrusted with a peace mission in the Northeast, do you think it is because of the trust he enjoys among various ethnic groups and can relate to their aspirations? Is it one of the prime reasons why Mr. Zoramthanga is the right candidate for the job?
Your question is very sensitive and rather delicate. I may not be able to give you your desired answer, but I'll give you a simple, honest answer in my view. Mr. Zoramthanga, say Mr. Mizoram, has offered his good office to bring the warring groups to a negotiating table. This is a very good signal, a good gesture from Chief Minister of Mizoram. And I hope the
screen. I want only him on the screen, yes.
Will respond and give him a chance to make peace in the Northeast. And I believe that Mr. Zoramthanga is a good friend of Mr. Ajit Doval.
Right.
National Security Advisor. Security, yeah. So he has got some facility, I should say. So if he can bring this warring group together to the negotiating table, it will be very good.
Okay. Now, yes, he's the right man according to you. Now, once again, Mr. Vanlal Gaya, what according to you are the main reasons for the success of the Mizo Accord? Because you were there in the, you had, gone through the entire negotiations yourself. You had been a close observer of that. You are a close, active participant. What according to you are the main reasons for the success of the Mizo Accord? Mr. Vanlal Gaya.
It is the will of the people. The people of Mizoram want peace rather than anything else. So the people of Mizoram, the church play a very important role in this respect. And all the political parties also want to have a peace because they realize that what I should say,
right.
Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun.
Yeah.
That is no longer applicable in Mizoram. So
yeah,
there should be a peace settlement, negotiated peace settlement,
yeah,
to meet our aspiration also.
Okay. Now, I'll have to go for a break, but very quickly, I want to ask Swapnil Barua, the right time for such a big peace push in the Northeast?
I think it's the right time and we have the right person leading the initiative. Because, why I feel that Mr. Zoramthanga is the best choice? One, that he has had experience of being an insurgent himself. He has trans-border connections and he has access to the government of India at the highest levels,
yes,
and at walk-in levels. And also, I think he would have connections still of his old days in the Chinese government.
Absolutely.
Besides that, the greatest asset possibly would be that he has the church to back him. And in the Manipur context, I think the church will be very important because, the Meitei rebels, I think, take sanctuary in the hills. So this aspect will definitely, without involving the hill people and the church, I think this.
I think there could not have been a better choice in today's juncture than Mr. Zoramthanga. As Swapnil Barua has very categorically explained, he has trans-border connections, he enjoys the trust of the government of India and, of course, the civil society bodies. I'll go for a short break, don't go away. When I come back, I'll go straight to Imphal, where I have Mr. Chongtam Bijoy of the BJP and Dr. Arambam Noni. Oh, don't go away, I'll be right back. Welcome back. Let me go straight to Imphal. Mr. Chongtam Bijoy, this is also seen by many as a very timely push by the Manipur Chief Minister, Mr. N. Biren Singh, and that he has already had discussions with Mr. Zoramthanga confirming the developments. And in the past, it was Mr. Zoramthanga. If the NSC and IM is talking to the government of India today, if we are in the verge of an accord, it is because of the ground prepared by Mr. Zoramthanga. He flew into Bangkok, met Mr. Muiva, met Mr. Su at that time, and convinced them to agree to come to India for the dialogue. Because earlier the NSC and IM was saying that we will not come to India for talks, we will talk only outside India. So it was Mr. Zoramthanga who convinced them, and that was admitted by none other than Zoramthanga himself. Now the question is, what about the civil society? Because my panelist from Aizawl, very, very veteran in their own right, because Mr. Vanlal Gaya was a top MNF leader, worked with Mr. Laldenga and Mr. Zoramthanga in those days. Now they're saying how the civil society is important. Now, as far as Manipur is concerned, we discussed the other day also. Now, what role? There has to be some formal discussions with the civil society in Manipur. Maybe you have to identify the civil society groups. You cannot just say that, oh, we need the civil society help. It has to be concretized. So what are the initiatives by your government?
The civil society, they reflect the various mood of the people of all sections. But at this very moment, the civil society will be reluctant to come forward for this peace process. Later on, I am sure they will join in because the people also wants to give peace a chance. The reason of their reluctance is that at the present, what is the culture or situation in Manipur is such that anybody talking peace to the revolutionaries, it may be considered or misinterpreted as a betrayal of the cause of sovereignty. That thing is very strong in Manipur right now, but somebody from the government and even from the central government, as well as Mr. Zoramthanga, he commands a wide respect across the border also, inside Burma also, I believe. All this thing will change the scene.
Right.
And all section of the, once the ball goes on rolling, everybody, civil society, the populace, they will also join, and maybe they will appeal the
Mr.
revolutionary to join the peace process.
Right. Now, Dr. Arambam Noni, the church and the other civil society had played a key role as far as Mizo Accord was concerned. Now the question is, Mr. Chongtham Bijoy is saying the civil society may be a little reluctant now, maybe they can join later on. But how important is it for the civil society now to actually back up these kind of peace efforts? Do you think they should be waiting for somebody to tell them, or they can come on their own and take an initiative now that they have some kind of a formal negotiator, a formal, not negotiator, let's say mediator in the form of Mr. Zoramthanga?
I just want to first refer to the statement given by the Chief Minister of Manipur when he said that, peace process in Manipur should be unconditional, right? I think the very idea of unconditional may be a very important critical issue for the government as well as the underground. For example, I think it looks like the underground will put forth a lot of conditions.
Yeah.
For instance, this is our demand, for example. As our Chongtham Bijay has already said that, the undergrounds might talk about self-determination or sovereignty for that matter. Whereas the government of India may be slightly reluctant to engage the rebels on these questions.
So do you think, now the question is, do you think Mr. Zoramthanga will be able to break the deadlock? Do you think Mr. Zoramthanga will be able to convince them to reach a common ground?
That's a very hypothetical, critical question, because if you look at the question of Mizoram, one can see that the talk was very much within the constitutional setup of India. However, in the case of Manipur, it may be slightly different. So I think it will be a very critical juncture for the government of India and the government of Manipur to break the ice and then get on all these people, particularly civil society and also the underground outfits.
Noted.
I just want to add one more point.
Noted.
One more point.
Yes.
I also want to say that in Manipur, there are a couple of, dimensions of undergrounds putting forth their demands. For example, one is self-determination. Second is pre-merger issue. And third probably maybe some kind of autonomy or some kind of negotiation.
Right.
So,
we will talk about that later. You see, Dr. Arambam Noni, what the ultimate result of the negotiations that will come later. But now the challenge is to bring the rebels to the negotiating table. I'll come to you a little later. Mr. Sunil Nath, you see, the MNF was pragmatic enough right from the beginning to say that they will talk within the ambit of the Indian constitution. They were ready. After 20 years of insurgency, maybe on the 15th year, 12th year, they must have realized that, they cannot get a sovereign nation. So therefore, they were pragmatic enough. And that is perhaps the reason why Mizo Accord is successful today. Will it be tough as far as Manipur case is concerned? Or do you think they will also come around, because the Nagas also had a separate Nagaland demand initially, independent Nagaland demand initially?
Well,
What is your take?
See, as far as the demand for sovereignty and the explanation that there is justifiable ground to claim sovereignty remains, the thing is that yes, it is true that some of the rebel leaders are absolutely convinced that they have got justifiable rights to claim sovereignty, and at the same time, Government of India has its own ground. So the thing is that first the two sides have to sit together.
That is the
and
challenge.
Discuss
Right now, the challenge is to bring the two sides to the negotiating table, and that is what Mr. Zoramthanga is going to do.
And everything under the sun can be discussed there.
Absolutely. That's a very important point. Right now, the challenge is to bring the warring factions to the negotiating table, and then you can push ahead. Now, let me go once again to Mr. Charlie Lalkauliana in Aizawl. Mr. Charlie Lalkauliana, so basically, where we left last time, you agree that civil society in Manipur holds the key and can play a lead role. We are talking all the time about Manipur because Manipur is one of the hottest remaining insurgency theaters in the region today. Mr. Charlie Lalkauliana.
As I said, to try to broker peace in Mizoram just took a long time. You know that. And meantime, the people, all sections of the people agreed that they had to extend a sort of extension, a goodwill to the peace efforts. So Laldenga, even Zoramthanga, they had all that goodwill and support from the public. That was the secret of it.
Pu Lalkauliana, it has been a long time, but, what do you remember of Mr. Zoramthanga's role in the 1986 peace accord, particularly negotiations? Pu Lalkauliana, what do you remember? That's my question. Of the negotiations that led to the 1986 Mizo Accord, and what was Mr. Zoramthanga's role then?
Actually, he was one of the team of the mediators. But at the time, political situation was quite ripened, and that peace effort was very much there. Politicians, they are sponsoring, sort of situation and condition for the MNF to negotiate. That helped the MNF mediators quite tremendously.
So, are you saying, Mr. Lalkauliana, are you saying that the government has to be flexible and ready to walk the extra mile? Are you saying that?
Yeah, right, quite right. Not just the government, the civil societies, and here it's a Mizoram experience that church bodies was playing quite a tremendous, a huge role in bringing about peace in the state.
Okay, let me also bring in Mr. Vanlal Gaya. Mr. Vanlal Gaya, from the Mizoram experience, what is the required ground situation according to you for negotiations to actually start between the Government of India and the Meitei insurgent groups, for example? What according to you will be the congenial ground situation for negotiations to start? Yes, the panelists from Manipur have been very quick to point out that we cannot draw a parallel. Situation in Manipur is different. We all agree that situation is different from state to state, place to place, group to group. But there are some commonalities as well. But that my question is, Mr. Vanlal Gaya, what is that ground situation which is ideal for the start of negotiations, in your view?
Well, the people should know what they want.
Right.
We should be very clear what we want also, because we are demanding independence. But independence was out of question, because there is a limit on our demand also. Government of India is not competent to give independence to any part of the country. So MNF also had to realize also that fact. And within the Constitution of India, Constitutional framework of India Constitution, anything can be possible. So that realization have to come from the warring groups. For example, in 1969, early part of 69, I was in Dhaka with Mr. Laldega. And we discussed our future, or our survival problem also. So we thought that the best solution would be within the framework of India Constitution. So we should seek reconciliation with Government of India. So on the part of MNF, we have decided that Mr. Laldega deputed me to convey to Government of India that MNF is willing to have reconciliation talk with Government of India. That is a very important step. So even the insurgent groups in the Northeast, I should advise them to be specific what they need, what they want.
Absolutely.
Their demand. It should be doable, practicable.
Absolutely.
So the longer, I should say, the prolonged suffering should be stopped.
Absolutely. Viewers and my panelists, we have heard from the man himself how the MNF was extremely pragmatic and practical. Then they realized, discussed, brainstorming. How important, Sunil Nath, is it for a rebel group to weigh their strengths and weaknesses and come to a decision? Is pragmatism at all important? If you are really a rebel group with ideology, you have to be pragmatic. But if you are just a gang of people, then maybe pragmatism will not count.
Yes, because you see, sagacity at that level of leadership
Is necessary.
Is totally necessary, and you know, it's a compulsory qualification to be a leader, because being a leader of a political party, overgrown political party, is much easier than being a leader of a rebel organization where you are playing around with people's lives, including your own.
Absolutely.
So you have to be very careful.
Sagacity, very important.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have heard from Mr. Vanlal Gaya how pragmatic they were.
Yes, and I think that is
important.
In fact, it is so important today for someone to listen to this, that all the
Absolutely.
insurgents, the role of leadership in quantifying what is your needs, and that
quantifying the needs, that is
and
that
the
is
second
absolutely.
aspect is the doable part of it.
Mr. Doable.
That
Yes.
doable
What is
part
doable?
is very important.
Mr. Charlie, I'd like to go back once again to Aizol. Mr. Charlie Lal Kauliana. Would you now agree that rebel leaders in states like Manipur will be able to trust Mr. Zoramthanga better than anyone else?
I think they have to do their homework first.
Quite right. I think very few people will match the stature of Mr. Zoramthanga in terms of experience and knowledge about the affairs of the insurgency-related issues.
Right.
And also, Mr. Zoramthanga is quite experienced in the electoral battles also. He has had that experience. He fought so many battles and he won and has got himself defeated. And it's that experience. And he could be the right person for our Manipuri brethren to look to him.
No.
For help.
Okay, now, Poo Charlie, Mr. Zoramthanga, if necessary, do you think he should even go abroad? Like he did, like he went to Bangkok to talk to the NSNIM leaders?
You say it, because Zoramthanga's capabilities was evidence that brokering peace was to the extent possible. Now, he's just a man and might have garnered a lot more experiences from that also.
Right. Now, my final question to you, Mr. Charlie, how do you see the road ahead to peace in Northeastern region? I'm running short of time very quickly. How do you see the road ahead to peace in Northeast?
Signing an agreement, a peace agreement, not necessarily bring about peace. To illustrate the experience of Mizoram, I've been saying this all this time that Laldenga was a great leader. And Zoramthanga was a powerful mediator. There's no denying
all right. Poo Charlie Lalkhaunliana, thank you very much. Before I go to my panelist in Imphal for the concluding remarks, Mr. Van Lalgaya, my final question to you: do you think Northeast? I'll ask this is my pre-final question to you. Mr. Van Lalgaya, do you think Poo Zoramthanga is the right choice for such a complex? Do you think he will be able to tell the rebel leaders in the Northeast to be practical?
That's a very sensitive question. As far as I know, Mr. Zoramthanga is a good-hearted leader. He's a very good man who had experience, long experience. But I don't know whether he's the best man negotiator for that complex job. I know he's a good talker. I don't know whether he's a good negotiator. I don't know, frankly speaking. But as far as I know, he has got a good heart. He wants to bring peace in the Northeast.
Right.
Like in Mizoram.
Absolutely. Good heart is also extremely important for a mediator. Thank you very much, Mr. Van Lalgaya. Final comments from you, Dr. Arambam Noni. 30 seconds to you. I'm running short of time. 30 seconds.
Yeah, let me refer to our panelists from the Mizoram state and who said about doability of the peace process. I think the idea of doability has to come from both the sides. That is the government of India and the rebel group. They need to come down to a particular understanding where they can go forward. Unless this doability is worked upon by both the sides, I think there will be difficulty to get on. The other point that I want to raise is that the government of India must be able to open up its arms so that the differences can be addressed. With a very heavy hand or probably a military mindset, I think there can be no point of negotiation. So I think in order to have a point of negotiation, the government of India has to understand the historicity of the people and historicity of Manipur.
Absolutely. I'm running short of time. Mr. Chongtham Bijoy, Mr. Chongtham Bijoy, final comments. 10 seconds.
No, the mantra for the success of this peace process lies in the honesty, sincerity, and love. And I understand that Mr. Zoramthanga has a very high degree of emotional quotient, and I wish him, from being a broker of peace, he emerges as an angel of peace for Northeast. That's all.
Very well said, Mr. Chongtham Bijoy. That is the way to part. We all want hope from a broker of peace. He should emerge as an angel for peace. And as Mr. Van Lalgaya has said, Mr. Zoramthanga has a very good heart. And to be a successful negotiator, for somebody to get the trust, to win the trust of different warring factions, I think you need a good heart and you need to have an emotional quotient, as Chongtham Bijoy has said. With this, I come to the end of this edition. I thank all my viewers for watching the program and the panelists for being very engaging in these discussions. I thank everyone for watching the show. Good night and goodbye.
Northeast Tonight, brought to you by Oil India Limited, conquering newer horizons.